This video is possible thanks to contributions to the Existence University Patreon by viewers like you. Thank you. How to know when you have blanked out, and what to do about it. A lesson for beginner new intellectuals. Ayn Rand, in answer to a question about the difference between a person who is well trained in his field versus a person who is exceptional, stated, "The exceptional person has premises leading to an active mind. He does not rest too easily at any one level of his own development, and he doesn't take too much as given. Now, we cannot achieve everything at once. We must always take some things as given until our development permits us to question them. But the exceptional person acts on the premise, I must find things out for myself. I must go beyond what is now known. The well-trained, but unexceptional person acts on the premise of taking things as given. This is an established profession. I'll learn everything required. I'll read the appropriate journals and be as good a practitioner as any. That is the premise of stagnation. That type of person can achieve his goals and be competent, but in 5 or 10 years, his profession will have left him behind. I'm not saying it's never proper to accept the standards of your profession, but this is a beginner's premise. It's fine for the beginner to hold that the accepted standards are valid and to comply with them, but it's when one knows the essentials, what's been discovered so far, that the distinction between the men and the boys appears. The man will want to go a step further, and if it's more than one step, so much the better. The exceptional man does not stand still, and does not take the acquisition of knowledge from others as his permanent state. Ayn Rand Answers, paperback 179. Just to check Ayn Rand's thinking, try to imagine a man that did take the acquisition of knowledge from others as his permanent state. A man that only took in a world described to him by other men. A man that when told by others that 2 and 2 make 5, that man would see 2 things and 2 more things, and thus would see 4 things, but his mind shorts out and reboots with the answer 5 things. A man that rejects his discoveries because they are not the discoveries of others, because they are his discoveries. That would not be a man, neither in the masculine sense nor in the rational animal sense. That would be a man acting against his nature. Thinking for a human being is so tied to his nature that even the above example of that non-man still has to be willing to think a little bit in order to receive and repeat the message. But memorizing isn't really thinking. But at least it requires a small mental action on the part of the individual absorbing the brainwash. An individual that wishes to be a man, a new intellectual even, must be willing to ignore the standards of the past. Being old does not mean being correct. A man takes steps beyond the standard and becomes exceptional because he can. A new intellectual takes a step beyond the standard and becomes exceptional because he knows it is the morally correct thing to do for his mind, his self-made soul. To those looking to take your first steps beyond the standard of your profession, it becomes necessary to discover yourself, including your emotional responses to new information. Ayn Rand created a meme that is common among objectivists, that being blank out, the idea of what the mind must do in order to prevent emotional and mental damage to the self, and is as much of a reflex as the act of physically dodging objects thrown at you. It is a built-in response to avoid pain. Knowing when you have blanked out thus becomes a simple task of being honest with yourself. When you learn to notice yourself blanking out, you suddenly leap past that mental wall, as a blankout is the first step in being exceptional. It is the marker of where your knowledge ends, and that you are insecure about that knowledge. The blankout thus turns to genius insight over time as every new thought becomes either a new step forward or a confirmation of the ground you built for yourself. So first, how to know when you have blanked out. Blanking out usually results in emotional outbursts, without a rational reason, of course. repeating a dogmatic meme without following through, sudden rejection of the idea and not wanting to continue thinking about it, the willful suspension of one's consciousness, or that you are afraid of looking stupid or ignorant. And what can you do about it? If you are honest with yourself, it is easy to acknowledge that you have acted emotionally to some information that you have just received. If you feel like you don't know if you fully understand your own response, meaning you are unsure if you will be able to trace your ideas back to the source, or if you find yourself afraid of looking stupid. In any of those cases, it will be easy to begin exploring the blank out by asking yourself why you had a reflexive response. But there is another kind of blank out which you should be aware of, which is emotionally reinforced by consensus, such that you did not respond emotionally, although your heart may have raced a little bit. You don't think you will look stupid in arguing your point, you feel comfortable with your argument. But the issue is that you believe that you could trace it back to the source because you believe that others already have. Meaning you believe the authorities have already won the argument for you, and therefore you don't need to look into it because someone else already has or someone else will. If you have no interest in that subject, that is one thing. But if you are engaging in that conversation and engaging in ad hominem or simply ignoring your opponents because who are they to argue against the establishment? This I would consider to be a type of blank out, as the thought can only go to a point where the answer then becomes someone else's idea to answer. The purpose of looking to avoid a blank out is so that your mind is capable of assessing a fact, because you can trace the facts all the way to the source and back up the hierarchy again. To be able to integrate your total conceptual framework into your discussions with others. The end goal being that you can be certain of your total knowledge. Quoting Rand in the essay, The Comprachicos, self-esteem is reliance on one's power to think. It cannot be replaced by one's power to deceive. The self-confidence of a scientist and the self-confidence of a con man are not interchangeable states and do not come from the same psychological universe. The success of a man who deals with reality augments his self-confidence. The success of a con man augments his panic. The intellectual con man has only one defense against panic, the momentary relief he finds by succeeding at further and further frauds. Or, the mark of an honest man is that he means what he says and knows what he means. Once you are able to recognize yourself blanking out, you can use your philosophy of objectivist virtues to remind yourself why there is no harm in engaging in a conversation involving these ideas, because if you are wrong, you learn, and if you are correct, you help someone learn something and prevent them from spreading bad ideas. If you catch yourself blanking out, you can remind yourself that you hold that rationality is a virtue and that moving past a blank out into thinking is an important part of being rational. Remind yourself that you hold that independence is a virtue, and therefore your action of engaging in a chance to independently trace an argument down to first principles ought to result in a rewarding value of reason, purpose, and self-esteem, etc. You can do this with all of the virtues. The downfalls of pushing beyond the standards. Those that do not wish to be exceptional and want to stick to the standards don't want to rise to your level, and they will try to stop you from raising theirs. But if you hold integrity and honesty as virtues, the no you get from others becomes quite funny as you begin to see that they have no arguments, just bullet point facts handed down from on high. If it is your goal to be a new intellectual, then you must be willing to think. Your life must be guided by reason, and you must not surrender your body or mind to the brutes or mystics. Aim to be exceptional for your sake, for your pride. And remember what Ayn Rand said. The question isn't who is going to let me. It's who is going to stop me. If you would like to support Existence University, you can visit us at our Patreon at patreon.com/youexist. Or you can now go to the Existence University website at existenceuniversity.com. Future products will be coming to the market, but in the meantime, you can contribute to Existence University at existenceuniversity.com through our donate page, or you can buy our products. Check back often as the store will be updating over time.